Donald Trump announced that we're going to have 50% tariffs on Brazilian imports. We don't even have a trade deficit with Brazil. I didn't even realize that, but we have a small surplus with Brazil. But now we want to make Americans pay a 50% tariff to buy Brazilian products. And Trump said that we're going to do this for political reasons. So because Trump has some kind of political beef with Brazil, he's going to make Americans pay 50% more to buy Brazilian products? I mean, why is he taking out his frustration on the Brazilians with the Americans? But again, this is part of his misunderstanding of who pays his tariffs. I mean, we're not able to push off our costs on the rest of the world, right? That's just not the way tariffs work.
Peter Schiff begins by revisiting the stock and bond market volatility caused by the original round of Trump tariffs years ago. At that time, reciprocal tariffs imposed by other nations caused a sharp drop in U.S. equity markets, a bond market shakeup, and a significant drop in the U.S. dollar. According to Schiff, the only reason markets recovered was because Trump called a temporary pause to the tariff escalation. This 90-day break allowed optimism to resurface, earning Trump the sarcastic nickname Taco, Trump always chickens out. But now Schiff warns the tariff game is back on. While the market appears unfazed, the Nasdaq even hitting new highs, investors may be underestimating the damage these new tariffs will cause. Schiff explains that the reintroduction of high tariffs, some even steeper than the originals, contradicts the narrative that Trump's end goal is free trade. Schiff uses the Vietnam trade deal as a primary example of this contradiction. When Trump first proposed tariffs, he and his supporters, including figures like Larry Kudlow, argued that they were a tactical maneuver to push other nations towards zero tariffs, creating a true free trade environment. The strategy, they said, was to bluff high tariffs in hopes that other nations would fold and eliminate theirs.
One of the most significant things that's been happening are the trade deals, right? The supposed trade deals that Donald Trump has been negotiating. Because as you remember, there was a 90-day pause after the reciprocal tariffs resulted in a crash in the stock and bond market of the dollar, a crash that stocks recovered from, bonds mostly recovered, and the dollar didn't recover at all. In fact, the dollar made new lows. But the reason that we got the recovery is because we got the pause. Trump called the tariffs off. And in fact, he earned the nickname of Taco, right? Trump always chickens out, Taco. And I think that the markets are expecting another helping of Taco because Trump has been announcing some very bad deals. And the Nasdaq still finished at a new high today, right? The markets are still rising, despite the fact that we're now learning that the Liberation Day tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs, are coming back. I mean, they may not be quite as high as they were originally proposed, but they're almost there. And in some cases, they're higher. But they're much higher than what investors expected when they bought that dip. Now, the first sign of this happened last week, and I actually did a Twitter Spaces or X Spaces and discussed it, on Friday. But I talked about the Vietnam deal because that really shows where Trump is going, and it really exposes a lot of the BS that a lot of people were talking about when Trump first announced these tariffs. Because remember, there are a lot of free traders that normally wouldn't like tariffs. And so they had to justify what Trump was doing. One I recall was, Larry Kudlow. I was listening to him on his show on Fox Business. But he was saying, look, Trump's a free trader. Trump wants free trade. He's just going to leverage these tariffs. He's coming up with a high tariff, hoping that other countries will drop their tariffs to zero. And then we'll reciprocate and do the same thing, right? They tariff us zero, we tariff them zero. Because supposedly these high tariffs were there to reciprocate the high tariffs that other countries had on us. Except they didn't have high tariffs on us. They were all make-believe. But people thought, well, if other countries go to zero, well, maybe we'll go to zero. Well, that's exactly what Vietnam did. Vietnam dropped their tariffs on U.S. imports basically to zero. Now, they weren't very high before. I think they were still less than 10%. I mean, so they were there. I mean, 9-10% isn't nothing, but it's certainly not, a big wall of protectionism that's going to keep our products out of their markets, right? But there were some tariffs. Well, Vietnam said, okay, Trump, we'll go down to zero. Now, what did Donald Trump do? Did Donald Trump say, great, that's exactly what I wanted. Now we're going to go to zero too, and we're going to have free trade? No, that's not what Trump did. Trump raised tariffs on Vietnam to 20%, hardly zero. And that's higher, much higher than the tariffs were on Vietnamese imports before Liberation Day. And if it turns out that goods came through Vietnam via China, so China sends goods to Vietnam and then Vietnam re-exports them to us, that's going to be a 40% tariff. Now, I'm not really sure how we, prove that what we're getting from Vietnam originated in China. So maybe there'll be some cheating to get the lower tariff. But we're going to be paying 20 to 40% tariffs. That's not zero. That's not free trade. So, Vietnam lived up to its end of the bargain, and we did not. Now, of course, Trump is touting this as this big win, because when you hear the way he presented it on Truth Social and the way he talks to the media, he said they're going to be paying 20 to 40% tariffs, and we're not paying any tariffs. But he's got it backwards. They're not paying our 20 to 40% tariffs. We're paying those tariffs. The Vietnamese are paying no tariffs because their government lowered their tariffs to zero. So as a result of this negotiation where we supposedly came out on top, the Vietnamese get to buy American products and their government is not going to tax them for doing that. So our products are now cheaper for the Vietnamese. That sounds like a win for them, right? If I was in Vietnam and the government said, hey, guess what? If you want to buy stuff from America, it's now cheaper. Oh, that's good. Now I have extra money to buy something else, right? Because I didn't have to spend as much on that American product. On the other hand, Americans are now being told everything you buy from Vietnam is going to be maybe 20 to 40% more expensive. Now, sure, the business may not pass along 100% of that tariff. Maybe the business will eat some of it and take a lower profit. Who knows? But Americans are going to be paying these tariffs. So we lost the deal. It's not a good deal for us. It's a rotten deal for us. I mean, maybe in Donald Trump's mind, it's a great deal because he gets to pretend that we won something, because he gets to pretend that Vietnam is paying these tariffs when they're not. We're paying the tariffs. But more important, it proves that the whole idea that we were trying to be sold, that Trump's real goal was a level playing field of zero tariffs, is complete BS. And in fact, more proof of that was just announced earlier today.
Trump often invokes non-tariff barriers as justification, vague allegations that foreign nations use hidden regulations to block American goods. But Schiff dismisses this as speculative at best, fabricated at worst. There is no proof of these barriers, and if they did exist, the answer would be negotiation and diplomacy, not arbitrary punishment of Americans. Schiff then revisits Trump's pattern of hyperbole and bravado. He recalls Trump's dramatic declaration after Liberation Day, the day tariffs were first announced, claiming that nations were lining up to kiss his ass and beg for trade deals. Schiff says he immediately doubted this and now feels vindicated. Months later, no deals materialized, and Trump resorted to imposing tariffs unilaterally, revealing that the supposed rush to negotiate was pure fiction. The supposed best trade deals ever, like USMCA, which Trump touted as a NAFTA replacement, were in Schiff's view little more than rebranded versions of existing agreements with minor tweaks. In some cases, these revisions actually made the deals worse for Americans. Despite this, Trump doubled down and imposed more tariffs on Mexico and Canada, again undercutting his own deals.
Donald Trump announced that we're going to have 50% tariffs on Brazilian imports. We don't even have a trade deficit with Brazil. I didn't even realize that, but we have a small surplus with Brazil. But now we want to make Americans pay a 50% tariff to buy Brazilian products. And Trump said that we're going to do this for political reasons. So because Trump has some kind of political beef with Brazil, he's going to make Americans pay 50% more to buy Brazilian products? I mean, why is he taking out his frustration on the Brazilians with the Americans? But again, this is part of his misunderstanding of who pays his tariffs. I mean, we're not able to push off our costs on the rest of the world, right? That's just not the way tariffs work. Now, in addition to the deal he made with Vietnam, later than that, he made a deal with Japan and Korea. Or he didn't make a deal, excuse me. He started sending out letters. Trump went public and said, look, nobody's making a deal with me. We're not getting good deals. I'm just going to send out letters telling people what they're going to pay for the privilege of doing business in the United States, right? I'm just going to assign these tariffs, and that's what every country is going to pay. No, it's not. The countries aren't paying these tariffs. What he's doing with these letters is he's informing other countries how much he's going to tax Americans when they buy their products. That's what he's doing. He's not telling them what they're going to pay. He's letting them know what we are going to pay. So he sent letters out to Japan and South Korea saying 25% tariffs on Americans who import stuff from Japan and Korea. Now, even though their tariffs on us right now are almost non-existent. I think the average tariff rate in South Korea is under 2%, and in Japan it's under 1%, right? So these are small numbers, right? They're there to raise revenue more than anything else. They're not there to close down their markets to our products. Yet we're going to slap these countries with these 25% tariffs. Now, of course, Trump always likes to pretend that, well, there's these non-tariff barriers. No, there's not. They don't really exist. They're in his imagination. Just like all of the countries that were lining up to kiss his ass to make trade deals. I said that at the time. Right after Liberation Day, when Donald Trump came out and said they're lining up to kiss my ass, everybody is begging to make trade deals, I came out and said, I don't believe that. I don't think anybody is begging him for anything. I don't think they're getting all these phone calls. I think it's all being made up, or it's a figment of Trump's imagination. He had a dream or something like that. And now, right, almost 2 months later, Trump is saying, because we don't have any deals, because nobody is negotiating, well, we're just going to send out these letters and let everybody know what they're going to be paying. That proves that I was right, that it was all BS. That people aren't rushing to make deals because there's no deals to be made. This is just all part of the Trump show, pretending that he's negotiating us into some economic boom, that he's got to make deals with everybody. We don't need to make deals. We haven't been screwed over. They keep saying that, well, we got to change all the rotten deals that were made by incompetent presidents of the past. Well, you know, one of those deals was NAFTA, right, that he said was so great, right? And then, of course, he puts tariffs now, more tariffs on Mexico and Canada, you know, even though he's the one that did the NAFTA deal, or not the NAFTA, the USMCA, which was basically a rebranded NAFTA. And at the time, he said it was the greatest trade deal ever, even though it was pretty close to the worst trade deal ever, which was the one that USMCA replaced. But also, Trump just announced, I think yesterday, 50% tariffs on copper, which sent copper prices soaring by over 10%, over, I think, $5.50 a pound. No all-time record high on copper, although copper has pulled back a bit. But again, it's not really a tariff on copper, right? It's Americans who want to buy copper. Now, most Americans don't directly go out and buy a bunch of copper. It's companies that buy copper. Americans buy products that contain copper, right? Or if they buy houses, right? There's a lot of copper in your house, right? So you don't buy the copper, you just buy the house that has a lot of copper in it. But everybody who's buying products that contain copper, well, those products are going to be more expensive because the copper is more expensive. Look, it doesn't matter why the cost goes up, right? If the cost goes up because of a tariff, it's the same thing as it going up for any other reason, right? Your energy costs go up, your wages go up, your insurance cost goes up. Whatever the cost of production is, that's going to be embedded in the price. I mean, how can somebody think that that businesses pass on all their costs except tariffs? They just decide, well, we're just going to eat those. That's not how it works. They're indifferent. They're all costs. Like, the only time I think that a company may decide to eat some of the tariff, like the exporters, might be if there's really a viable U.S. alternative and they don't want to lose out on their market share, and they may be willing to accept slightly lower margins, so eat some of it. But in many cases, there is no U.S. domestic alternative. We've got to buy and import. And if all these countries are facing tariffs, well, they all pass them on because it doesn't put anybody at a competitive disadvantage, because everybody's got to build tariffs into their price structure.
Please like and subscribe.